From the most ancient civilizations to empires that left an indelible mark on history. Every nation has a beginning, a history that delves into the depths of time. What secrets lie in the shadows of the origin of nations? How did they emerge? What powerful forces shaped the destiny of peoples? Dear listener, in this documentary, we invite you to embark on a captivating journey into the depths of the past, where the origins of the world's nations unfold before us, revealing ancient secrets that have remained hidden for centuries. Before we begin, I invite you to give this video a like and join this ministry by subscribing to our channel so that YouTube will notify you every time we upload a new video. Let's get started. Chapter 10 of the book of Genesis tells us about the origin of the nations of the earth. As we have seen above, humanity and therefore the nations of the world descend from three men: Shem, Japheth, and Ham. Studying this chapter and trying to trace the origin of nations can be somewhat complex and even tedious for those who do not enjoy detail. However, we will attempt to provide a summary based on what scholars have commented over time about the origin of nations according to Genesis chapter 10. Now let's start reading verse 1. These are the generations of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, to whom sons were born after the flood. This chapter begins by recounting the origin of the nations descended from the three sons of Noah. Now, genealogies in the Bible serve several purposes, as we have seen in the past, and on this occasion, they show us how humanity was organized into governments around the world, thus fulfilling God's mandate to multiply and fill the earth. The word genealogy means book of generations or book of origins. In Genesis chapter 10, we should not interpret it as an exhaustive and complete list of all the descendants of the sons of Noah. But the most prominent descendants are highlighted to emphasize a particular origin. Throughout history, many scholars have considered this genealogy as the table of the origins of nations, attempting to trace the origin of ancient peoples and civilizations. Many have analyzed this chapter not only from a theological perspective, but also from historical, anthropological, and archaeological approaches. In this context, the research of Jewish historians such as Flavius Josephus, ancient commentaries on the Hebrew Talmud, as well as writings of the early church by figures such as Hippolytus of Rome and Jerome have been considered. In addition, contributions from 6th century scholars such as Isidore of Seville have been taken into account, along with more recent studies. All of these contributions combined seek to discover which nation or clan this descendant may have originated from. Let us continue reading verse 2. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. This is the beginning of the lineage of Japheth, who had behaved with filial respect towards his drunken father. For this reason, the blessing received included the formation of great nations, the freedom to expand over vast regions of the earth, and to dwell in the tents of Shem. This did not mean that they could dominate the Semites, but rather ensured that they lived in peace with them, sharing privileges and blessings. According to the studies of various scholars, the descendants of Japheth would have populated the regions of Europe, the peninsula of Asia Minor, and areas beyond the Black Sea, possibly reaching as far as India and China. In Jack Enlow's Glossary of Biblical Names, it is noted that Japheth's name means expansion, alluding to the fact that his lineage was dispersed throughout Europe. Just as Noah prophesied about the future of his descendants, may God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. Now we are told that Japheth had 7 sons: Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. Next, we will offer a summary, based on the opinion of several scholars, of the clans and nations that emerged from the descendants of Japheth. First of all, Gomer, is believed to have been a warlike group that was constantly on the move and spread across Asia Minor and parts of Europe such as Spain, Galicia, France, Gaul, and Great Britain, the Celts. Secondly, we find Magog, whose name is mentioned in the prophecies of Ezekiel and in Revelation. With some difficulty, scholars have come to the conclusion that this offspring inhabited the regions of the former Soviet Union, which today comprise Russia and other Muslim nations. In third place, we find Madai, from whom scholars claim the Medes, a key nation in the history of Israel, descend. Together with the Persians, the Medes defeated the Babylonians and managed to conquer much of the ancient world. In fourth place, there is Javan, from which the Ionians are said to descend, an ancient name given to the inhabitants of Greece. In fifth place, we find Tubal, whose name, along with those of Meshech and Javan, is mentioned as a nation in Ezekiel chapter 27, verse 13, among other passages. Some maintain that Tubal's descendants went on to found Tobolsk, the ancient capital of Siberia, which is today a city in Russia. In sixth place, we find Meshech, mentioned alongside Tubal in Ezekiel. Many scholars suggest that this name refers to present-day Moscow, the capital of Russia. Finally, we find Japheth's seventh son, Tiras, whose descendants, according to Josephus and the Hebrew Targum, became the Thracians. Let us continue reading verse 3 to 5. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. The sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. From these, the coastlands were populated, each according to his language, according to their families, in their nations. In addition to Japheth's sons, chapter 10 highlights some of his grandchildren. Gomer is said to have had 3 sons. The first, Ashkenaz, is commonly associated by Jews with the peoples who gave rise to Germany. The second, we find Riphat, about whom there are few clues. Josephus identifies them as the Raphlagonians, while others link them with a people called the Ribii, who lived east of the Black Sea. Finally, we have Togarmah, mentioned in Ezekiel, and who, according to various scholars, has been related to the inhabitants of Armenia. These are the descendants of Gomer. Now, the sons of Javan were 4. The first, Elisha, mentioned in Ezekiel chapter 27, verse 7, has been associated with the peoples who gave rise to Greece. The second is Tarshish, whose name appears in the second book of Chronicles chapter 9, verse 21, and which is related to Spain. The third, we find Kittim, identified as the inhabitants of Cyprus. Finally, the fourth son, Dodanim, whose descendants settled in the southwest of Asia Minor on the islands of Rhodes. Thus, we see how the descendants of Japheth settled in the regions of Europe, the peninsula of Asia Minor, and the areas beyond the Black Sea. Let us continue reading verse 6. The sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Now we come to the descendants of Ham, Noah's youngest son. Unlike the descendants of Japheth or Shem, those of Ham present challenges in terms of tracing some of their lineages throughout history and connecting them to a significant nation or clan. However, this does not mean that they did not give rise to important civilizations. These descendants migrated to Africa, Arabia, Syria, Palestine, and Mesopotamia. As for the meaning of his name, Jack Enlow's Glossary of Biblical Names associates it with a black-skinned person living in warm climates, supporting the theory that most of Ham's descendants had black skin. Furthermore, in Jeremiah, there is a verse that refers to the skin color of the Ethiopians, who are descendants of Cush. Let us read Jeremiah chapter 13, verse 23. Can an Ethiopian change the color of his skin? Can a leopard remove its spots? Another version translates this passage as follows: Will the black man change his skin, or the leopard his spots? Now, according to the author of Genesis, Ham had 4 sons, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. The first, we find Cush identified with Ethiopia. The second son, Mizraim, is associated with Egypt. The third is Phut, which is related to Libya, and finally we have Canaan. The Canaanites are an ancient people who lived in the land of Canaan, which is the land that God promised to the descendants of Abraham. Canaan is described in the Bible as stretching from Lebanon to the Brook of Egypt in the south and the Jordan River Valley in the east. In the Bible, especially in Genesis chapter 10 and Numbers chapter 34, it was called the land of Canaan and occupies the same area occupied by present-day Israel and Lebanon, plus parts of Jordan and Syria. Let us continue reading verse 7 through 12. And the sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, and Sabteka, and the sons of Rama, Seba and Dedan. And Cush begot Nimrod, who became the first mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, just as Nimrod is a mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went forth into Assyria, and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Resen between Nineveh and Calah, that city being great. These verses reveal to us the descendants of Ham, about whom we have very little information, which makes it very difficult to identify them with recognized nations or clans. Now the sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, Sabtecha, and Nimrod. The first 5 of them are believed to have lived on the African continent. In addition, some maintain that Sheba, the first son of Cush mentioned in the list, became the patriarch who founded the kingdom of Jamame in Arabia. Then, 2 great-grandsons of Ham appear on the list, sons of his grandson Rama and descendants of his son Cush. These are Sheba and Dedan. Some are of the opinion that there is a difference in pronunciation between the name of the first son of Cush listed and that of the son of Rama. The NVI translates this verse 7, highlighting the difference in accentuation and the most likely pronunciation of the name. Let us read verse 7 of the NVI version. The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ragama, and Sabteka. The sons of Ragama, Sheba, and Dedan. Flavius Josephus identified these 2 descendants as the patriarchs of the Sabian peoples. Saba, according to its most probable pronunciation, to whom the Bible refers in Job, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Joel. As for Dedan, Josephus pointed him out as the ancestor of a people of Western Ethiopians. Now, the account of the genealogy highlights in a special way one of the sons of Cush, who became one of the most prominent men of his time, Nimrod. Both the Bible and traditions give us information about him. The Bible indicates that Nimrod became the first powerful man on earth, which implies that he was one of the first rulers with great power among the nations. He was also considered a brave hunter before the Lord. The historian Flavius Josephus describes him as a haughty and defiant man who rebelled against God, ruling with an iron fist the cities under his dominion. According to Josephus, Nimrod instilled in his subjects the idea that they should not thank God for their prosperity, since it was their own efforts that had granted them happiness. Hence, many believe that the name Nimrod means we rebel, and as for his past, there are many more myths related to him. Now, the verses presented in this chapter 10 of Genesis show us the cities that Nimrod founded. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. From that land he went forth into Assyria, and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Resen, between Nineveh and Calah, that city being great. Of these cities we can highlight 2 key cities, Babel, which gave rise to Babylon, and Nineveh, which became the capital of Assyria. These 2 nations, Assyria and Babylon, gained the reputation of being among the most fearsome and ruthless peoples of the ancient world. Both played a crucial role in the destruction and exile of Israel. First, the northern kingdom of Israel was conquered, and its population deported by the Assyrians. Later, Babylon destroyed the walls of Jerusalem and razed its temple, driving most of the Jews into exile in the region of Chaldea. These nations, located in the Middle East, are remembered for the cruelty and pride they inherited from their ancestor, Nimrod. Let us continue reading verses 13 and 14 of chapter 10 of Genesis. Mizraim begot the Ludim, the Anamim, the Lehabim, the Naphtuhim, the Pathrusim, the Casluhim, from whom came the Philistines, and the Caphtorim. In these verses, we see that the sons of Mizraim are 7 in number. Very little is known about them except that they inhabited the region extending from Gaza to Egypt. Furthermore, it is mentioned that the descendants of Casluhim gave rise to the civilization of the Philistines, who appear repeatedly in the Old Testament and were great enemies of Israel for a long time. It is believed that many of the clans of this family were lost over time due to the constant Ethiopian wars that were fought in the region, and therefore there is not much more to say about them. Let us continue reading verses 15 to 20. And Canaan begat Sidon his firstborn, and the Heth and the Jebusite, and the Amorite and the Girgashite, and the Hivite, and the Arkite, and the Sinite, and the Arvadite, and the Zemarite, and the Hamathite, and afterward the families of the Canaanites were scattered. And the territory of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as far as Gerar, and as far as Gaza, and as far as Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, and as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham according to their families, by their languages, in their lands, in their nations. The genealogy also introduces us to the children of Canaan, who were Sidon, Heth, and others, who gave rise to nations that settled in the region known as the Land of Israel. These peoples include the Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Arkites, Sinites, Arvadites, Zemarites, and Hamathites. The firstborn of Canaan, Sidon, is said to have been the founder of the Sidonians, mentioned in the Bible, and which today corresponds to a city in Lebanon. Het, on the other hand, is recognized as the ancestor of the Hittites, a people who also appear in the book of Genesis and who have been rediscovered by archaeology in recent times. The rest of the descendants of Canaan seem to have settled in the land of Israel, and from there they expanded to populate areas of Africa, Arabia, Syria, Palestine, and Mesopotamia. These are the sons of Ham according to their families, by their languages, in their lands, in their nations. Now, a good part of Ham's descendants came from his son Canaan. These nations also reached a great level of wickedness to the point that God decided to grant their land to Abraham's descendants. God was clear to Israel in asking them to destroy these cities completely so that they would not be influenced by them to commit their abominations. In this way, Israel conquered the lands of the Canaanites, and Israel came to take possession of them, the descendants of Canaan being destroyed and fulfilling the prophecy of Noah concerning him. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he will be to his brothers. Let us continue reading verse 22 to 31. The sons of Shem were Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram, and the sons of Aram, Uz, Hul, Geder, and Mash. Arphaxad begot Shelah, and Shelah begot Eber, and to Eber were born 2 sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and the name of his brother was Joktan. And Joktan begat Almadad, Sheleph, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Adoram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. And the land in which they lived was from Mesha, as far as Sephar, even to the hill country on the east. These were the sons of Shem, according to their families, by their languages, in their lands, and in their nations. Finally, we come to the sons of Shem, of whom we are told there were 5, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. Of these 5, we are not given any further genealogy of Elam, Asher, and Lud. The descendants of the firstborn, Elam, are believed to have become the Persians. Asher, for its part, expanded throughout northern Mesopotamia, where its inhabitants mixed with the Hamites who already lived in that region, giving rise to the nation of Assyria. Then we find Lud, who according to Flavius Josephus, was the ancestor who gave rise to the nation of Lydia in Asia Minor. Now, next, we have 2 sons of Shem who do have a genealogy. At the end of the list in Genesis chapter 10 verse 22, we are mentioned Aram, and according to this chapter, his sons were 4: Uz, Hul, Geter, and Mash. It is believed that this lineage settled in regions such as Armenia, Mesopotamia, and Syria. It is interesting to note that Uz was the land where Job lived. Finally, Shem's other son was Arphaxad, and he fathered only one son, Salah, but Salah fathered Eber, from which some believe comes the name Hebrew that would be given to Abraham. Then Eber begot 2 sons, Peleg and Joktan. Let us note what the biblical text says. And to Eber were born 2 sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and the name of his brother was Joktan. It is interesting to see the statement that is presented around the person of Peleg, because in his days the earth was divided. This statement is a prophetic announcement of how the earth would be divided in their times after the flood. Regarding him, the testimony of scholars is not unanimous. Some believe that these were great seafaring merchants, and others believe that they became pirates, and that they extended towards the south of Mesopotamia. Some hold that the Pelagists were driven from their lands by the Greeks and were eventually absorbed by them. Now, it is from Peleg that the lineage from which Abraham, the father of Israel, would be born would come, as will be shown in the next chapter of Genesis that we will study shortly. Then we have the descendants of Heber's second son, Joktan, who were 13 in total. Let us note what the biblical account says. And Joktan begot Almadad, Sheleph, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Adoram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. According to Flavius Josephus, the descendants of Joktan are believed to have settled in India. Thus, we see how the sons of Shem dispersed throughout Mesopotamia, Syria, Persia, and even reached India. Let's continue reading verse 32. These are the families of the sons of Noah according to their generations, in their nations, and from these the nations were scattered on the earth after the flood. This concludes chapter 10 of the book of Genesis, revealing to us the rise of nations and their ancestral origins. Amidst so many names, 70 in total, we can conclude the following. First of all, God's desire for his creation is seen in this chapter, the desire that they be fruitful and multiply in the land that he gave them to possess. Secondly, we also see how Noah's descendants were scattered throughout the earth. Japheth's descendants populated Europe, the Asia Minor Peninsula, and the regions beyond the Black Sea, possibly reaching as far as India. Ham's descendants settled in Africa, Arabia, Syria, Palestine, and Mesopotamia. Finally, Shem's descendants occupied Mesopotamia, Assyria, Lydia, Syria, Persia, and also extended to India. Thirdly, we can see how man's wickedness persisted even after the flood, especially in the figure of Nimrod, who became an arrogant ruler before God and gave rise to cruel nations such as Assyria and Babylon. Fourthly, we can affirm that God has dominion over all nations. Even if they stray into their evil, the Lord continues to reign from heaven. In Daniel chapter 4, verse 26, we read, "And as for the command to leave the stump of the roots of the same tree in the earth, it means that your kingdom will remain firm once you recognize that heaven rules." These words were addressed to Nebuchadnezzar, the proud and cruel king of Babylon, who thought that, thanks to his own efforts, he had built such a formidable nation. However, God confronted him to teach him that, in the midst of the events that happen in the nations, it is God who rules, because he is the Lord of all nations. Dear listener, in the course of our lives, it is easy to fall into the illusion that our achievements are the exclusive result of our own efforts. However, we must remember that God has ultimate control over all things. His sovereignty encompasses everything. By acknowledging his rule and authority, we find deep peace in his infinite wisdom and perfect plan, both for our lives and for the entire world. And so we come to the end of this video. Thank you for being part of our channel. God bless you abundantly. Until the next video.